So we have with us today none other than the Managing Director from Foodpanda Singapore, Mr. Otavio Calixto, who will be sharing with us about thriving in a startup environment. So Mr. Otavio, in his day-to-day work, handles every aspect of the business, including managing the growth of the organization, driving sales, and ensuring that the company is constantly innovating to continually deliver the best experience for all communities. So let's welcome Mr. Otavio Calixto, Managing Director from Foodpanda Singapore, up on stage.
Let's do it. Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
That's a startup session, right? So let's make it very informal. I'm going to talk about all the realities of startup work.
Myth or not, okay, startup jobs are totally chaotic and unstructured.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I think that a lot of people have this in mind, but actually it's not a reality. Startups, to be successful, they really need to have a structure. It's really needed to have a framework that works and make the business successful. Even in our case specifically, that we have grown from a startup to a large corporation already, I would say we still want to maintain some level of flexibility in the way that we operate, not having a rigid structure, a rigid framework, but having some level of kind of, say, messiness. So we add more creativity to the work, we add more ideas to the table. So I would say it's welcome to have a lot of new things coming, a lot of emerging ideas, but it doesn't mean it's unstructured and chaotic.
More than 75% of startups fail, so it's too risky to join a startup.
Before thinking about these probabilities, the most important thing is really like failure is part of the success. Actually, failure is super important for success. All of the major tech companies, startups that are very successful today, they have failure a lot, right? So Elon Musk, for example, has exploded several rockets before getting to Falcon 9 and being so successful, right? Netflix has started with DVD and they had a hard time. Now they are just rocking out in streaming. So being very, I would say, acceptable and very welcome to failure and to trial and error specifically, right? Because, I mean, you are trying for the thing to succeed, for the thing to work. And if it fails, okay, you try it again. If you have this in mind, I think it really changes everything. Failures sometimes are partial, and then you learn a lot, and it becomes a huge success afterwards. And sometimes it's just a total flop, and then you understand that you need really to tackle that problem in a different way. So I think it's really important, these two things, right? Understand what's the journey of the startup you are joining or you are aiming to join, in which specific part of the journey it is, and understanding that failure is acceptable, understanding that failure is an integral part of success. It's kind of dangerous to say failure is very acceptable, right? Because if a person fails all the time...
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is experimentation, right? Because, and it really comes from the scientific methods. You have an idea and a concept you want to prove, and basically you are trying several different ways for that to happen, several different alternatives. As long as the alternatives are well structured and the efforts are going towards achieving a given objective that is building value to the business, it's acceptable. It's hard to define a number or how many times or what's the level of failure, right? Yeah. But naturally, I would say the companies and the managers in startups, they are more open to understand this level of failure. And even one thing that is very important, for the ones that use Foodpanda here, I hope most of you use Foodpanda, we have developed a lot of new verticals specifically. And you guys probably know Panda Mart, the groceries vertical of Foodpanda, Pickup, and all of the other verticals that Foodpanda is operating. They all came from trial and errors. We developed at some specific level, and then it failed, and then we developed again, and then it was a bit more successful, and then again, and it became a big hit. So these are great examples.
It's difficult to stand out from the competitive startup environment. Is this true or false?
Startups, they are always solving a specific problem, a specific thing that is still unresolved, a specific need that already exists in the market. Everybody wanted to have the convenience of food delivery at home, right? But no one was serving that well. And then 9 years ago, 9 years is a long, long time in the internet world, Foodpanda came to solve this problem specifically. And then, naturally, what we have done was to focus on that, making sure that we came with a good experience to the client, focus on excellence in this experience, and then we achieved the stage we are today. There was a lot of companies trying this, and they have failed because basically you really need to make sure you bring excellence to the table, and you double down again as well on solving the problem that the customer has, the problem that the partner has as well, restaurants in this case. And bring a very compelling story around that, a very strong service behind it. So it's really important as a company to make sure that you keep yourself really focused on that problem statement.
What if your niche is not something that is a very prevalent problem?
Sure, yeah. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that they have founded companies that they were very specific to solve one problem. I know one guy, for example, that he has a company that specifically solves one problem of the robotic arms, just one part of that, and he's very successful. Because what happens is, he's the only one operating on that. He has developed a very good solution. He has a lot of expertise on that. And it's really important when you have a lot of eagerness to be successful and a lot of eagerness to bring excellence to the table. And basically, he was successful without the need of having thousands of employees, right? Wow. And I would say this also happens in several different elements of the internet industry. I would say even in the tech industry overall. So yeah, it's possible to be successful in a smaller scale for sure.
Do you have any advice for like small startups like us that's trying to balance out or sustain the whole supply and demand chain in a marketplace?
Yeah, that's a very good point, right? It's known as coordination problem when you have to coordinate supply and demand to create a specific marketplace, right? First of all, I think that there is a lot of literature on this already. One of the best books I ever read on this is called Matchmakers. I really recommend you to read. And it really says that you need to increase your supply at the same time that you're increasing demand. Because if you just inflate a lot one of these sides, what's going to happen is there is going to be an imbalance in the way you operate, and then naturally you're going to be underserved or overserved, right? And this can bring a lot of costs as well to the company, because maybe you are building a company that will be only serving one of the sides of the marketplace. So I think that's the most important one. You deal with the coordination problem in the sense of nurturing supply and demand at the same time. And the second thing is you need to work on excellence on the two sides, right? You really need to understand that not only your clients, but also your partners need to have an excellent service, because if you start maybe having a lot of drops or a lot of people that are churning from your platform, you are going to get into the coordination problem back again. So maybe you're going to get imbalances between demand and supply. And also it's important for you to have a very clear view of what's the level of service you can provide at a given point. Sometimes we want always to be super excellent to the customers, and we kind of give an average service to the vendors or to the partners, right? I mean, overall marketplaces. And this is really not the best thing to do, right? If you only have resources to provide a certain level of quality in your service for both sides, make sure both sides are served, right? And make sure they have the same level of quality.
Startups value fresh young bloods only because they're people with more creativity and new ideas. Is this true?
Oh, not necessarily. I would say it really depends on the startup. If it's a startup that really needs to be close to young people because they are solving a problem to the young people, naturally you want to have some fresh minds, right, working with you. But I would say, in general, this doesn't happen. In Foodpanda, this doesn't happen. We really want to make sure that, first of all, the person has the eagerness to work in a startup, because it really depends on you to have good level of energy. It doesn't mean that you're going to work a lot, because we do have a lot of good initiatives to keep a good work-life balance. And it's possible in startup. So for the ones that are thinking about startup careers, it's really possible. And I would say, even in very well-established companies, several times you're going to have a less balance of work-life than you would have in a startup, because there is more openness to discuss workload in startups. But I would say, again, right, besides of the eagerness, you also want to understand the expertise and how much that person can add in terms of building the company. Usually, people with more experience adds much more in building the company, but then they come in management levels. And naturally, as any other company, people that are just like recently grads, they come more on the entry levels, and they add a lot of new ideas and kind of fresh perspective to the company.
Hi, I'm Calixto, and I'm actually really curious about whether you have any advice for young individuals who are aspiring to enter, say, the startup sector, especially non-technical or trust and safety related roles. Thank you so much.
There are three main skills that are important to have in mind. The first one, actually not only skills, but also the way you are more prone to work. So the first of all is you need to be very open to learn. So you need to understand that this is going to be an environment with several different perspectives, a lot of things on the table, a lot of opportunities to be explored. So you're going to learn a lot. And again, it doesn't demand to have technical skills to this. You can, I know people that they were without any graduation, and they were very successful in startups. Or even people that have graduated in areas that has no relation to technology, and they were very successful there. The second one, I would say flexibility. It's super important to be flexible, because what's going to happen is, and probably we can say flexibility or adaptation, if you will. What's going to happen is every single quarter, there is going to be something new popping up. Does it mean that everything changes? No. It means something new can be, maybe you are going to a new market, a new territory specifically. You can be opening a new country, depending on the stage. Or you have just realized that the product can be better developed on a specific component. Then this can be a bit technical. Or you realize your customer wants to have another aspect of the product or the service, and then you are going to add this component to what you are offering, right? So adaptation and flexibility are really important. And yeah, I would say that if you have these three things, you're going to be able to make sure that you'll be very successful in startups. You will not be demanded to have a lot of technical skills. Not necessarily you need to be an expert in your area. And you're going to be able to not only enter in that startup, but thrive and have a very good career there.
In a startup environment, do you perform best alone or as part of a team?
I would say it really depends on the function specifically. I have seen people being very successful working alone in sales, which is, I would say, a function that usually demands for you to work in teams and being very successful in your loan negotiation, but usually the team comes together to be successful. I've seen people that in very technical roles, they were only successful working as part of the team. For example, there is a function specific to tech companies. I think the well-established companies, they're doing so as well, which is called analytics. So analytics is really put your hand down, analyze as much as possible the databases, doing a lot of crazy statistical analysis, and find the opportunities that maybe nobody has seen or nobody has perceived. And I've seen people being very successful doing this with a group, because it brings more perspective and helps to brainstorm, helps to bring another view to the scope of the problem you're trying to solve. But at the same time, it's a kind of function that if you do it alone, probably you're going to be very successful. So it depends on the
it definitely depends on the job.
Exactly, on the job and the profile of the person. But the functions inside startups, they adapt a lot. So I would say it's better for you to be used to work with different teams, not necessarily to work all the time in group, but being able to work with different teams.